Hey, what's up guys? It's Dom from Whole Printing Inc. Today's video is going to be a bit different than printing content. In today's video we're actually going to be going about the dark truth about nets. So net 30, net 15, net 45, net 60, net 90, all these types of net basically, which are your terms of payment. I've seen a few videos on YouTube. There's some good ones out there. Now do mind yourself, I'm not like an accountant, I'm not certified to be talking about that type of stuff, so do not just take my word for it. Obviously there's going to be better resources out there to educate yourself on this topic. I just want to share my personal experiences working with FedEx and other companies which are using the net system, and how I have experienced receiving my payments from these corporations. So if I'm looking down, I'm looking at some notes I took down so we don't get too off track, and I keep this video as humanly short as possible. The dark truth about net 45, we're going to be talking about net 45. Net 30 is the most common one. We also have net 60, net 90 in some cases. But in my case, working with this company, FedEx, it's actually all net 45 for the terms of payment. So right now we're doing crew necks, we've done t-shirts. It's our third or fourth time working with FedEx. We've worked with other big corporations also, but it's Canadian, so we worked with also Evaco, we worked with LCBO, we worked with big companies and big corporations, so we know a bit how it works and our personal experience. But this is what I didn't know, and this is what you can experience if you're working with a big corporation. Now, you have your invoice date, you've got your due date, and you've got your shipping date. Your invoice date, okay, it's not really important besides for your thing, so for your books. Yes, it's significant that you have like an invoice date on your invoice, obviously, but the invoice start date means nothing, okay? It can be accounted for with the net 45. So it may be related to, let's say, your payment, but you can't count on your invoice date. This is the biggest mistake I have made. You can't count on the invoice date. The due date is the most important. The due date in some cases will start and trigger the net 45 to begin. So let's say your due date is on the 27th of July. You might be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm gonna get paid on that date, on the 27th. Wrong. You're most likely to receive your money around the 8th of September if net 45. In some cases it might be earlier, but after that due date, then you could do some type of action and maybe like contact the supplier or client and explain to them the payment hasn't been received yet. But until then, the due date is the actual reference point for your net to start, whether that be net 30, net 15, net 45, net 60, net 90. The due date starts and the net starts the countdown too. So in this case, the 27th of July, this is when the net countdown actually begins. You would think, and I would have thought, that it would have started at the invoice date when you actually made that invoice. In some cases it does, but in most cases they'll push for that due date because the due date is a longer period of time and they're going to be able to have that in the reserves for longer, which is an incredibly big asset for them. Use due date as your start of production. So make your invoice date when you start negotiating with them, obviously, and they approve the invoice. This is the invoice date. But your due date should be the second that you start your production. And you must explain to your client that you're starting this due date, so the net 45, the net 30, the net 15, the net 60, the net 90, all these nets can start, so that when you're going to deliver their products, you're most likely going to have your payment, or it's going to be almost there. And in some cases, you're already going to receive the payment even before you go deliver their products, which is the most ideal case. We all want to get paid as quickly and as easy as possible. Obviously, it's not only for our own personal benefit, it's obviously to be able to actually get those supplies, get the material, pay your employees, all that type of stuff. But when you're unaware of this, it can have significant impact on your business, on what you're going to be producing. So this is the biggest thing I've learned. The invoice date really means nothing when dealing with these big corporations. It's really the due date, and you would think that on the due date you would get paid, but no, technically they're going to be 45 days overdue, or even a bit more in some cases, because after it's actually been the 45 days, sometimes you actually have to wait for them to mail it, and this can take, I won't discourage you guys, but just the mailing process can take some time. So it's important to take into consideration all of these variables. I know a few things were said, and I don't want to mix you guys too much. The biggest thing I want to recap before we end this video is the invoice date is just when you actually start and they have confirmed that they are going to agree with that term of payment and that the invoice is approved. That's your invoice date. Your due date is when you start your production. You want to insert that due date when you actually start the production of that client. You want to have your invoice date and your due date as close as possible so that the shipping date is as close as possible as the due date, so they don't wait too long for their stuff. But you have the liberty to receiving that payment closer to the shipping date when they're actually going to be receiving their product. Last thing you want is your shipping date and due date to be the same, and you basically receiving your payment 45 days or later in some cases after you actually delivered their products. This is something to take into consideration. It can have a big impact as it is having on me. I'm trying to stay positive as we always do, but this is just things that we learn in business, and it's important to be educated on this. This is coming directly from an accountant at FedEx, so I feel educated enough to bring you guys this quick summary. Biggest thing, put your due date close to your invoice date so that the shipping date is going to be significantly further from that, giving you time to do the production and you to ship the actual products and receiving your payment either beforehand, during, or slightly after actually shipping their product. Hopefully this video shines some light on the net situation. Me, in my personal experience, I found it very insightful knowing this new information, and I will make sure to have my due date and invoice date very close so I can have my shipping date a bit further but not too far so they don't wait too long, but giving myself more leeway to actually have that payment come through without having to wait 45 days after actually shipping their product or delivering them. Like I said, I hope this video shines some light. If you find it somewhat insightful, make sure to leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe if you're new. This was Dom from Whole Printing Inc. Make a print you'll never forget.